Eat more chips, don't let the salad win. That's the message in terms of nature of the food maybe that we consume in Wales.
Oh, in Wrexham town they say there's a team that likes to play association football with precision. On the terraces they call, come on Nixie, hit that ball, and we're off to the second division. Oh, we'll see the Reds with me, and you must swear that you will see the vision. Top of Division 3, led by Arno Litti, we're off to the second division.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the Eat More Chips podcast, the official podcast for one of the most recognisable flags in the Welsh football supporters universe. Still no Daz this week as he's having a peck and buttock lift and probably still recovering from the excitement of Monday. But in a week when a team of physicists from a British university used nanotechnology to create what they dubbed the world's smallest violin, an instrument that can't be seen without a microscope. The Loughborough University team said the platinum violin measures 35 microns, a measurement unit equal to 1/1,000,000th of a metre long and 13 microns wide. The violin is smaller than the diameter of a human hair, which ranges from 17 to 180 microns. Tardigrades, the 8-legged micro-animals, measure between 50 and 1,200 microns long. Well, my little brother has been in discussions with the university, and the pod will be borrowing the micro-violin next season, only to be played by him every time opposition fans whinge about being beaten by Disney FC. It's Jamie! Yeah!
All I heard then was nanotechnology, and all I could think of was Iron Man. So come on, sign me up. I'll have some of that.
I think my sausage fingers would struggle even with something that's, well, to be brutally honest.
You can't even do a flute, can you?
Yes. No, exactly. We were just talking before we started about our neighbours across the border and their result against Senegal last night. Well done, England. Nice one. Well, congratulations to you for
well done, England.
For showing us how it's done. Well, as we very well know, we have a tendency to go on a bit, as Jamie, at his age, doesn't get out much and he likes to have someone to talk to. Now Monty the cat has told him to bugger off. On the request of Ken Bareilles 2794 on YouTube, see, we do listen when you say something, we have some timestamps on the screen now. So if there's something in particular you want to watch, just fast forward to the time listed. If you're listening on audio, however, you have to suffer like the rest of us. Sorry. As mentioned earlier, Daz, the Bear Grylls of the pod, is still away on a jolly, trying to avoid his multitude of fan. But he'll be reporting in, of course. Hello, Daz.
Hello, guys, and welcome from the Big Smoke once again. It's becoming a bit of a habit. I do apologise. This is not my normal affair, but somehow work has landed me in London a few weeks in a row, and so here I am calling it in as I usually do, but by definition calling it in. So hopefully I can contribute, add to your wise words that you're sharing together, and hopefully catch up with you properly soon.
As we said last week, the transfer window was open, but it did close last Tuesday until the 16th of June due to the FIFA Club World Cup being held in the US. There have been some signings in the initial window, with some of Wrexham's direct competitors making some of those signings. Plus, Ben Davies not coming to Wrexham after signing another 12 months with Spurs. Surprise, saves me having to run down the high street naked like I bet somebody last week. But the biggest surprise for Wrexham fans was the signing of ex-player Sam Dolby by League One side Bolton Wanderers on a 4-year contract after being on loan last season at Dundee United while still on our books. Jamie, 4-year contract for Sam? Are you surprised by that?
Well, all I can say is his agent must currently be in the desert trying to sell sand to the Arabs, because he must have the best agent in the world. Look, I don't begrudge him a move. You know, he absolutely did the right thing last year and moved away because he wasn't getting game time at Wrexham. He did really well for himself at Dundee. I'm a little bit surprised he's not stayed there. I'm sure they they will have put something to him or in front of him. European football as well. But I can only assume that the deal that Bolton have offered him is a lucrative one, and like you say, a 4-year deal. You can't begrudge any footballer turning that down. Interesting move. It was quite funny. Sort of, I was following one of Matt on Racecourse Rambles. Been doing by every other day. He's been doing just like a news round kind of event on YouTube. And because I work from home a lot, I've been able to jump on a couple of them. And they were talking about this the other day. And there was a Bolton fan on the chat kind of at the same time. And I think I just don't see it. I don't know. I'm not convinced he's going to score a lot of goals. And we both know that there's going to be quite a lot of pressure on him at Bolton, particularly if he's coming in as the main striker. He's been given the number 10 shirt. Look, in a different system, he might prove me and all the other doubters wrong. The only issue I ever had with Sam Dolby was his work rate. It used to frustrate the hell out of me because he I'm not saying he was lazy, and obviously I haven't got the statistics to back it up from his GPS thing, but he always looked to me like I wanted to give him a shake, to just move around. If you look at someone like even Jay Rodriguez, 30, what is he, 34, 35, and as much as there were question marks over his contribution or a debate over his contribution to the team when he came in last season, if you watch him, he's all over the place. He moves around and he puts the yards in, and that was one thing that was frustrating me with Sam Dolby. But good on the ball, good finisher. Had some good moments for us. And if he thinks this is the right move for him and he's managed to secure himself a 4-year deal, then I don't begrudge him it at all.
Wrexham obviously haven't made any signings at the moment. There are very strong rumours at the time of recording that somebody was seen at the club yesterday, although there are names going around and nothing has been confirmed officially. Are you expecting Wrexham to make a signing in the very, very near future, or do you think we are going to have to wait a little bit longer before the names start rolling in?
Well, I saw Zlatan Ibrahimovic in the co-op in Rostuflen, so
that's funny. I saw Ronaldo and Lidl's in Rostuflen, so yeah.
Which one? Fat Ronaldo or new Ronaldo?
It was Fat Ronaldo. He was buying some. He was buying some ciders. So yeah.
Bad times. Ciders. This video of Ronaldo now sitting supping 4 cans of cider. Yeah, like you, I've heard these rumours in the last sort of 48 hours. Ryan
Hardy's name is coming to the surface, and if you look on social media at the moment, with Plymouth fans are also saying that they think that something has been triggered in his contract and he may be going. I mean, Ryan Hardy is a player. I've watched him for a while now, ever since the season ended and people started touting his name. He would be a good signing, I think. What do you reckon?
Well, to be fair, I'll throw the question back at you. I've seen his numbers. He's played 240 times and he scored 70 goals for Plymouth or something, I think it is, which isn't a bad return. But I'll be honest, I don't really know much about him as a player. So what are we talking? Are we talking is he a Fletcher Palmer style player? No,
he's a striker. He's more of a Mullin, Sam Smith type player.
So are we thinking that Sam Smith becomes that focal point and somebody's playing off him?
Either that or the two of them fight for the same position, a la Sam Smith and Marriott have done this towards the end of the season. How Mullin and Marriott did, that's my thinking. Yeah. That's my thinking.
I don't know. It's an interesting one. I'll have to do a little bit of. To be fair, I haven't really done any research on it because I wasn't sure we were going to name him. But
I mean, nothing's confirmed. It just seems to be the name that's floating around at the moment. But it could be
100%. There's no smoke without fire, and there does seem to be a lot of his name. It does seem to be at the forefront. We were linked to him in January as well, weren't we? So I think there's definitely been some interest in there. He's got 1 year left on his deal at Plymouth. So it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if there is truth in it. But I just don't know enough about him. I probably have seen him play, but I can't recall seeing him play. I'd be fascinated to know which of the striking areas he fits, because, like I say, for me, I'd be surprised if we were bringing in, given that Fletcher's now gone, Palmer, okay, he's still at the club, and whether he will still be at the club at the start of the season, I don't know. But the fact that he couldn't get on the bench for the second half of last season, you would assume he's not going to be anywhere near the front of the queue. So if you think Ryan Hardy is more of a competition for the Sam Smith place, that surprises me a little bit, because I thought if we were gonna try and bulk up anywhere, it would have been on the other side of that, with like the target man, the big man, as Parky likes to play, i.e. like a Kiefer Moore, for example. But I don't know. I'll do some, obviously. We've got a little bit of a break after today, haven't we? So when we're next back on, hopefully we'll know by then whether it's come to fruition. If it has, I'll try and do a bit of research.
The one thing that you always look at these is because normally when players float across, it's because they know current Wrexham players, and of course, Ryan and Dan Scarr played together a lot while at Plymouth.
Yeah, I get that.
And they are friends. So I don't know whether that's a pointer as well.
Which would make sense. The other sort of question, really, which is coming to mind for me, and again, it's one I can't answer because I don't know enough about him. But obviously, Parky's done an interview with, I think it was The Athletic, and then Les Reed has done an interview with somebody, hasn't he? And they both aligned with what they've said in regards to what they're going to be looking for this summer, which is pace and power, which is music to my ears, because you'll know firsthand how much I said all through last season about pace. I think we desperately need pace, but the fact we're looking for pace, power, mid-20s, I think was another term that was quoted. So we're trying to move away from this sort of seasoned veteran kind of mantra. That sounds great. Does Ryan Hardy tick those boxes? I mean, he's 28, so I suppose age-wise, he's at a good age. Is he pace? Is he power? I don't know. I don't know.
I think he's pace. I think he's definitely pace. I mean, I watched the highlights of him because obviously he was in the team that beat Liverpool in the FA Cup last season. In fact, he scored the only goal from a penalty, and he had a couple of chances where he was running into the box at pace and leaving some of the defenders for dead. So I think definitely pace. I don't know. I don't know enough about power.
I mean, anyone we bring in doesn't necessarily have to tick all three of those boxes, but I think that's the general consensus of what they're looking for is that pace, power, and a little bit younger. But no, it'll be interesting. I mean, where of Plymouth did they get relegated?
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, so they're back in League One.
Back in League One.
Okay, so so I suppose from his perspective, I was going to say, I suppose from his perspective, then it's if he's been at Plymouth for 200 and odd games, he's been there for a good few seasons. Maybe he thinks it's time for a change. If he's got a year left on his deal, there's going to be a fee involved, so it'd be interesting to see what that is, because I don't know what you're talking. Are we talking in the millions or the 100,000s? I don't know.
Well, I mean, transfer market, obviously you have to take what they say with a pinch of salt, but they valued him at €1.8 million.
Okay,
which is about 1.6 million pounds for that. Yeah,
but in the last year of his deal, you wouldn't expect us to pay. You wouldn't expect us to pay anywhere near that. Look, who knows? I'm like everybody else. I'm very keen to want to see new signings come through the door. I think we're just going to have to be a little bit more patient. It's coming to mid-June now. I honestly think it's going to be another couple of weeks before we see any sort of significant movement.
Don't be afraid to cry now, even when the world comes crashing in. Don't forget to sing when you win.
Episode 5 of Welcome to Wrexham has hit the streaming services this week and continued the level of great viewing. Entitled Anything's Possible, the January transfer window provides a moment for the club, its owners and its fans to contemplate losses, imagine futures and sign the best players available. Jamie, they keep tugging on the heartstrings for sure. What did you make of episode 5?
Yeah, another brilliant episode. Like you say, episode 5. I think there's only 8, isn't there? So, it'll be over before we know it. I said it last week, and not to sound like a broken record, but they are doing such a good job, I think, this year of telling so many stories in these episodes, but it's not confusing, it's not disjointed, and it all fits, it all works. I mean, obviously, for this episode in particular, there was quite a big spotlight on the sort of troubles in form around the end of 2024, Christmas into January, the fact that we scraped over the line in some games and then we started having some sort of iffy results. Obviously, a bit of insight into the conversations that were going on internally for the need for reinforcements, which obviously then eventually materialised to be Ryan Longman, Sam Smith and Jay Rodriguez. It was interesting that they sort of highlighted the games that they highlighted, because it's good, because for me it's obviously games that they saw as significant, and they're games that I would look back on as well and say that they were significant for different reasons. There was the Shrewsbury away game, which was a horror show. They featured that a little bit. The Birmingham home draw, which was a much better performance. In fact, probably the second half performance was arguably up there with some of our best stuff in the season. But then the Stevenage home defeat, which was terrible. But then the new guys came in, and then we started to turn it around. And I think the Crawley away, Northampton away, and particularly the Crawley game where Elliot Lee scores that late winner, like a header with like 5 seconds to go. That, if you look back, that was really significant, because that started us on a little bit of a much better trajectory away from home last season.
And I was at that one. I was at that Crawley game, and literally I was standing just opposite the edge of the box where Fletch hit it. Lee hit it in. So yeah.
What they didn't show was obviously the foul he committed leading up to it, which was a blatant foul all day long. But hey ho, we'll gloss over that and we'll just take the goal. Obviously, with the January transfer stuff as well, it was really nice that they gave a little bit of appreciation to a couple of the players that were leaving. Particularly JJ and Anthony Ford, because viewers of the documentary will feel connected to those guys in particular, because they had very personal stories to tell in earlier series. These are not just players that flit in and out of episodes and it's such and such. They both told and had quite a significant time in episodes dedicated to personal trauma they were going through. So I think there was probably a much deeper connection with those two. I suspect it'll be the same for this next one with like Jordan Davis, for example. But it was really nice that they obviously gave a little nod to them. But yeah, you said it at the start there. They pulling at the heartstrings. The Arthur Massey tribute was just was unbelievable. That piece, the episode where they featured him, I can't remember if it was last season or the season before.
It was
the episode they did where it
season.
was featured very heavily around him and his family. And I've referenced this before, but that from a like an artistic point of view and from like a cinematography point of view, which is something I'm very interested in. That shot of him sat in the middle of the Kop with the drone pulling away, for me is one of the best things that I've seen certainly on the Welcome to Wrexham. And that sounds crazy when you think of all the celebration stuff that we've seen, but when you've watched that episode and you understood Arthur's history, Arthur's connection to the football club, his family's connection to his football club, to the football club.
Absolutely.
That was such a powerful moment for me. But what they did in this episode was it was genius. It was so well done. It was so it was so well done. It was very touching, very clever. The bits of him, the silhouette footage of him, walking up to where he would go to his seat, and then touching his brick on the outside of the Mold Road stand was just amazing, fantastically done, and the people involved in putting that episode together deserve all the credit that I'm sure they will get, and yeah, just another fantastic episode on what has been a brilliant season so far, and to know it's building up to this crescendo. If they carry on in the same vein as these first 5 episodes, these next 3 are going to be amazing. So yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Now in the Eat Chips podcast, it's time for today's newspaper, tomorrow's chip paper, where we catch up on Cymru and Wrexham football news. First up, Cymru under-21s were defeated 4-0 against Norway in their final friendly fixture on Friday before their 2027 UEFA European Championship qualifying campaign. Norway made a bright start to the game and nearly opened the scoring inside the first 4 minutes. However, the pressure told in the 15th minute as Norway slotted home a composed finish past the advancing Benjamin in goal. Despite responding positively after a brief water break on 25 minutes, Cymru found themselves 2 goals down shortly after the half-hour mark. Cymru created chances before the break in an effort to pull one back. Kai Andrew saw a promising effort to strike a Norway defender's arm, but appeals for a penalty were waved away by the referee. Maybe they needed VAR, Jamie? Moments later, Archie Harris delivered a dangerous cross into the box, met by Chris Popoff, who directed his header just wide of the post. Norway nearly added a third early in the second half, but Cymru responded with a chance of their own shortly after. Kian Ashford showed quick feet to beat his man on the edge of the area, but his powerful strike was well blocked by the Norwegian defence. Norway eventually extended their lead in the 84th minute, and the 4th came in stoppage time after Cymru failed to clear their lines inside the area. Jones's side will now look ahead to the start of their 2027 Euro Championship campaign, which begins against Denmark on September the 8th. Daz, disappointing result, this one, for the under-21s?
It's always hard to take a tough defeat like 4-0. It always feels, it's never a good thing to experience. But I think these are the games that will make a team like this. I think we have to sort of put it into some context that Matty Jones named, a dozen uncapped players into this squad. So this was always going to be about learning. It was about learning for the players, getting the experience playing at this level. It's about Matty Jones knowing who his best, who his best 11 on the day is, bringing in some young blood and sort of preparing him for the fact that he often has to forego the top names in his squad because they're often playing in the senior team, and at other times of the year that the games often coincide within the same week. So it's nice for him to be able to have sort of carte blanche to be able to pick and choose who he wants this week. So yeah, but I think it's just 4 does feel a little bit flattering, but Norway was definitely the better team, and it's hard. It's a hard result to take. But I think it's about building the long term here. We've got to face teams like Denmark and Austria and Belarus and Belgium for the next qualifying campaign, which begins in September. So so there's plenty of time for Matty Jones to sort of mull it over. With Denmark's our next game in September. So let's see what he's learned from this, and hopefully the boys have learned from it as well.
The $1 million TST tournament happened in Cary, North Carolina, and Wrexham Red Dragon men and women were both in competition. Wrexham first played Real Atletico and won 3-1, 2 goals from ex-Wrexham player Jake Hyde, and the winner from Wrexham regular George Boyd. Wrexham then played AFC Bournemouth and won 6-2, 2 goals from George Boyd and goals from Aaron James, Callum Edwards, Sakira Hassan, and the winner from ex-Leicester City player Mark Albrighton. The final game was versus Concafa FC, and Wrexham lost 3-1, the goals from Jake Hyde, which meant that they qualified for the last 32 and played Drip FC. They went down 5-0 and needed 6 to win. Wrexham goals from Albrighton and James gave fans hope, but Drip FC won 6-2, and Wrexham went out in the first knockout round this year. Wrexham Red Dragon women played Ultrain FC and blew a 4-goal lead, losing 5-4 in target score time. Wrexham goals from Lindsay Agnew, Nicole Baxter, and 2 goals from Havana Solon. Next, they played Drunken Monkeys and lost 5-0, then played Kansas City 2 and lost 6-3. Wrexham goals, 2 from Jamie Fields, 1 from Havana Solon. They came bottom of the group with 3 defeats and didn't progress any further. Jamie, not sure if you watched any of this. Wrexham women going out without a win for the second year running, and Wrexham men being knocked out 1 round worse than they were last year, as they were knocked out in the last 16. Has this changed your opinion on TST at all, or is it literally just a bit of fun and not really worth much of a concern for Wrexham fans?
It's not a concern for Wrexham fans at all, is it? Mate, I don't know whether it's disrespectful to say it's just a bit of fun. I think that there are clearly teams who take it very seriously. Then again, because there's teams that don't. I mean, Drunken Monkeys, Drip FC, for God's sake. I mean, where are those names come from? But
the women's competition is a thing because US women won it again for the second year in a row. Yeah. So there needs to be some serious competition there. I mean, obviously the men's side, there are 3 different teams have won it in the 3 years, but
I think it's fundamentally it is a marketing exercise. I think the club only gets involved with it from a sharing a name with it and being connected to it. Obviously, I noticed that Wrexham Lager was one of the tournament sponsors, wasn't it?
Yeah, I noticed
as well, which was quite cool to see that alongside the massive names like I think was it Adidas and Coca-Cola or something. I can't remember what it was, but there was a couple of massive names, and then you've got Wrexham Lager, which was like wow. But like we said when we very first started with it, it's very much, in my opinion, it's very much just a marketing exercise. There is obviously a huge demand for Wrexham, particularly in North America. So to have anything Wrexham related there, why wouldn't you do it? I honestly don't think they do it with any intention of thinking they're going to win. I obviously there's a cost involved because you've got to. I doubt the players are getting paid to play, but I'm sure they'll have to have expenses and food, accommodation, and flights to get there and stuff. And obviously they send some of the staff over because you have to have medical and kit and things like that. So there's obviously a cost involved, but they're obviously covering that via sponsorship or whatever. Take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. I mean, I tried to watch some of it. I watched bits of it, but obviously the times the games were on were a bit sporadic. The format for me is a bit hit and miss. There's elements to it that I like and elements that I don't like. I think Jay from New York said on a tweet which made me chuckle before a ball was even kicked, where he said something along the lines of just to kind of prepare yourselves for the style of commentary you're going to hear, because it's like you got to remember it's very low level. But to listen to like some of the commentary was difficult to listen to, and I don't mean I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it's really difficult to kind of listen to for a long period of time. The announcer at the pitch got me, because this will go over a lot of people's heads, but you'll know exactly what I mean when I say this. But it just reminded me of Caigurdy Carnival back in the 80s, because it was just. Yes, it was just something about it where it was almost like a fate kind of style announcement, like a fair announcement. So that made me chuckle. But for the actual football on the pitch, I think there were a few good highlights for Wrexham. I mean, that win against Bournemouth, George Boyd's, I think it was his first goal in particular, was an absolute peach. I mean, you score that at any level of football, whether it's training in the park with your kids or in any kind of a tournament, or if it was a full-on league game, you'd be over the moon scoring a goal like that, because that's why you play football, to score goals like that. But yeah, I think in the end we came undone, and similar on the women's side, we came undone by coming across teams who are much, much more comfortable playing this kind of format and this kind of style of football. Like we've said before, there are teams that enter that tournament on both sides that is what they do. That they play tournaments like just of that format. Although the thing that I did see, which I wanted to ask you, which I don't know if you know or if you saw it, but the team that won it, did you see they dropped the trophy?
No, I didn't see that.
Right, so I didn't look into it enough to see whether it was a joke or not. But legit, the trophy was this massive ball, basically, and I don't know what it was made out of. I don't think it was like porcelain or plastic or something. But it was this massive ball, and I don't know what was embossed into it. Loads of different. It might have been all the different teams that had entered. So the players are all together, and they're on a little bit of a. I guess if you imagine like going up to receive a trophy, you go up the stairs at a stadium. It was like a small version of that, but they were still elevated above the ground. And they lifted the trophy up to celebrate. And the next thing, it drops on the floor and just smashes into a million pieces. And I looked, and I couldn't work out whether they'd done it deliberately or whether it was a genuine accident. They didn't seem bothered about it. But yeah,
well, not with a check for $1 million in their pocket. Probably not. They probably didn't care. I mean, the one good thing was to see some ex-Wrexham players back in the Wrexham shirt. I mean, it was nice to see Ben Tozer back in there. It was nice to see Mia Roberts in there. It was nice to see Del Morgan in there. That was a good bit, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I think that for me would be the only thing that I would like to see going forward. If we carry on, but that'd be the only thing I would like to maybe see a bit more of, is that the players that are in the teams have got a bit more of a connection to Wrexham, i.e. like ex-players or young, youth players from the existing setup. I mean, there must be so many ex-Wrexham players who would play in that kind of tournament. I mean, to me, it screams like Ben Foster. It absolutely screams of Ben Foster.
Yeah,
I mean, he would be in his element in something like that.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. It's not something I would want to watch on a regular basis. But anything with a football in whilst we're in this off season, I'll try and give it a watch if I can. Even this Club World Championship that's coming up, I dare say I'll try and watch some of that. Although I'll probably be the only one by the sounds of it. But
I'm not interested in that. The 2025-26 UEFA Women's Under-17s and Under-19s Championship Round 1 draws took place in Nyon, Switzerland this week. In the Under-17 draw, Cymru Women's Under-17s, who were in Pot 1 in League B, were placed in Group B1 with Kosovo, Moldova and Azerbaijan. The mini-tournament hosts will be confirmed in due course. The teams in League B will play for promotion to League A in 6 groups, with the group winners and the best runner-up being promoted. League A Round 2, which will be drawn on the 11th of December, will be completed ahead of the 25th of March finals draw, will decide the 7 teams joining host Northern Ireland in the tournament next year. In the Under-19s draw, Cymru Women's Under-19s, who were in Pot 2 in League A, were placed in Group A7 with France, Finland and Turkey, a very tough group. Cymru will host the mini-tournament between November and December 2025. The teams were drawn into 7 groups. From these single-venue mini-tournaments, the teams finishing 4th will be relegated automatically to League B for 2025-26 Round 2, with the other positions deciding seeding for League A in that round. League A Round 2 will be drawn on 11th of December, the same as the Under-17s, and will be played in spring. They'll decide the 7 teams joining Bosnia and Herzegovina in the finals draw on April 22nd. The final tournament for the Under-19s Euros will be played on 27th of June to 10th of July 2026. Daz, women's Under-17s first, Kosovo, Moldova and Azerbaijan, a good chance of getting promoted to League A and potentially the final tournament?
I think you've got to think that that's got to be one of the best draws that age group have had. I mean, I think there's some teams there that we've got to have some confidence, got to believe that we can compete at. We talk all the time about younger age group is really hard to predict how these teams fare against each other at the higher level, because we just don't get to see this age group playing together. We don't see them playing against much different competition, and they're so embedded into their club sides that it's hard to sort of predict. So it's nice to be able to see them play, and I think with a draw like that, they've got every chance of joining Northern Ireland. So here's hopeful.
Daz, on the Under-19s, France, Finland and Turkey. Nia Davis's side with a really, really tough group there.
just like Wilco had to deal with the Group A situation, this is what we've asked for. We've asked for top flight teams. We want top competition, and making it into a Group A situation, that's inevitable. That's where you're going to get. So it's interesting that it's France. Echoes of the senior team. Turkey, we've got history with the men's, but I'm not really up to speed on how that is for the women's game. So yeah, no, I think there's a lot to be excited about. I think Niad's done such a great job, with this team, seeing them through the different age groups, and has really impressed. I think I like the way she talks about the game. I think the players play for her really well. And so, can they maintain their place in this group? It's obviously the ambition, and they've, but it is a much tougher draw. But it was always going to be when you're dealing with Group A.
Come and see the Reds with me, and you will swear that you have seen a vision. We know just how they feel when they're beaten by the field. We're off to the second division.
A Friday night in the capital saw Cymru take on Liechtenstein in the next group game for World Cup 2026 qualification in the first of 2 games this week. Craig Bellamy made 5 changes from the 1-1 draw at North Macedonia in March. Carl Darlow in goal, Connor Roberts for Josh Sheehan, Joe Roden, Ben Davis, Nico Williams, Ethan Ampadu for Jordan James, Harry Wilson for Dan James, Brennan Johnson, Liam Cullen for Nathan Broadhead, Sorba Thomas and Kiefer Moore for Chris Mepham. A slow start from Cymru as Liechtenstein let Cymru have the ball and sat in a very low block to make it hard work. Nico Williams went down injured on 19 minutes and had to be stretched off, which was a particularly low point in the first half, until 39 minutes when Joe Roden headed in a corner for his first goal for Cymru. Second half, Cymru started to relax with a silver cross headed in by Harry Wilson, and a ricochet David Brooks shot fell to Kiefer Moore to slot in the goal for the 3-0 win. Daz, Cymru made hard work of this to start, but came up trumps in the end. You and I were both there with the flag. What did you make of this game?
This was the game that we obviously felt was the dead cert. If you're going to have a prediction of where, rank these games in order, this was probably the one where we felt home against the weakest team. We knew we were going to get a result, but I suppose it was the manner and the result of the result, and the ultimately what was the final score. And I think that was something that we talked about last week. I think I chipped in with and expecting 3 or 4, and that's what we've got. And I think so that's a relief that we didn't sort of find any banana skins during this particular outing. I think in terms of performance, I think there was, a few things to be pleased about and a few things to be sort of disappointed about. So I think it was obviously heavily in our favour in terms of possession. I don't think we've seen a game quite so one-sided as this for some time, and for us to be dominating 75-80% of the time is unusual, but it's a part of our game at the moment. Possession, our ability to sort of press and attack is becoming a part of our game. I genuinely don't remember meaningful contact of Darlow touching the ball something like 3-4 times from memory, so it was incredibly one-sided, but that's an exciting situation for us to be in, is to be able to try and deal with different teams in different ways, and this is where we're going to try and hopefully learn more about our squad. What did we find out? I think we found out that we are very capable of producing moments where possession leads into attack, but can we finish off those goals? I do think that the wing play was great. Sorba Thomas was fantastic, as he has been for a while. The number of crosses that we were getting in, okay, some of the crosses weren't as good as they could be or should be, but there were occasions where perhaps a better ball would have would have helped. But equally, when those opportunities were in the box, I'm not sure we were quite firing on all cylinders in front of goal. Yes, it's nice to see Kiefer back in the middle. He brings a different type of game for us, but they marshalled him pretty well. And so it was. I do think we needed to sort of utilize then the likes of Cullen coming through from like I say, whether it's the number 10 position, but becoming their additional attacker, or getting on the ends of crosses. And there was a couple of times where that was successful. And so it felt like a training game, and we tried some things, and there's still, I think, plenty to learn. So I think generally, I think that the team were positive. I think that, we were confident. The crowd were on good form. So it felt that the team, it felt like it was enjoyed the game. But I think that a slow start, but what are you going to do against a team that defends so deep? So I think it was a good test. The downside being obviously a significant injury to Nico. That's worrying. But equally, it's these moments that allows us to know a bit more about our squad, our depth in the squad, and so how do we adapt and restructure the team in short notice, and adapting, and just in game play management was good to see. So I think it was never going to be the ultimate test, but I do think that managing the expectation, managing to keep the attacks going, not giving up, and certainly then the quality of the goals. There were some really nice finishes, because we know what Harry Wilson can do. He's our talisman at the moment, so I'm really pleased for him getting his head on the ball. It was nice to see some new faces, and say like Jay De Silva getting a run out. That was really exciting as well. So yeah, lots to be really pleased about. Whether it'll tell us anything meaningful long term, not sure, but I do think it was all useful stuff.
Jamie, comfortable win at the end for Cymru, even with the first half difficulties, which we expected. What players for Cymru stood out for you?
I think that the one which stood out in particular, and I think there was a lot of conversation about online, was Sorba Thomas. He was brilliant in that game until it came to crossing it in. He was frightening. I mean, it was quite funny because I was obviously scrolling through Twitter at the same time as the game was on, and the amount of kind of Wrexham fans that I follow that were saying, can we sign him? ? And funny enough, I heard the commentator say that he spent last season on loan at a French club, but I wasn't sure whom he belonged to in the UK. I had to Google it, and when I found out it was Huddersfield, I thought, do you know what? But then, literally 2 days later, it was announced he signed for Stoke.
So we will see him. We will see him next season, but unfortunately not.
Yeah, absolutely. In that game, there were, to be fair, there were a lot of very, very good performances, as you would expect, because of the quality opposition. I mean, you've got to put a massive asterisk on the opposition, because, with the greatest respect to Liechtenstein, they are fundamentally a lot of semi-pro players. They are 200 and something in the world for a reason. They did their best, and to be fair, the first half they did a lot better for a lot longer than I expected them to. We had to be patient, and we had to bide our time. But you could see from the off, Sorba Thomas was the obvious threat, and you just had to keep giving him the ball. But unfortunately, his end product was poor on the night. But yeah, he definitely was the standout player, I think, from that game. But then as the game went on, the quality, as you would expect, came through. And we once we'd been patient and we bided our time, that extra little bit of quality then just was found the key to the lock, and we ended up getting a comfortable 3-0 win, and beating lower level teams comfortably and competently is not for everyone, but we did it in the end. So
yes, England,
so,
we're looking at you.
Yeah. But no, I think at the end, but first half, I was looking at stats at half time, and I was thinking, Jesus, if this was a boxing match, it'd be called off. But like I say, we patience was key, and I think again, hats off to Bellamy for the way that he set the team out. He picked a very strong team. I was curious to see what team he was going to pick. Obviously, with the Belgium game only sort of 48 hours ish after, I knew he would put a strong side out, because I think he would deem it disrespectful if he did anything else. But it was stronger than I probably thought it was going to be. I'll be honest. I thought, again, you mentioned him before. When we talked about Wrexham with Ben Davis, I know he didn't have a lot to do defensively, but the way he controls the back line and reads the game, and his passing range is phenomenal. It's always a pleasure to watch him, and he obviously chuff for him that he's got another year at Tottenham, but that would have been incredible to see him in a Wrexham shirt, and maybe will one day, who knows. But all in all, a good night's work in the end. Job done. You couldn't have asked any more of them, and I think if I'm right, me and Daz both said 3-0 last week. So
you did, yeah.
Yeah, so
that's
that's one bullseye for the 25-26 Chip Shop League already. Yeah. Okay,
No.
cool. Thanks.
No, not even close. 72 hours later, Cymru had hot-footed it over to Brussels to take on Belgium in the second qualifier, and boy, what a game this was. Craig Bellamy made 3 changes from the Liechtenstein game, with Chris Mepham in for Nico Williams, Jordan James in for Liam Cullen, and David Brooks in for Kiefer Moore. This game had everything: controversy, despair, fear, anger, excitement, elation, disappointment, and a new level of hatred for VAR that I don't think Jamie will ever manage to match ever again. And I'm sure we'll hear about it in a second. Belgium showed their word ranking as De Bruyne and Lukaku actually turned up for once versus us, because normally they don't. Put in a first-class masterclass, they were awarded a penalty for a handball on 15 minutes, which Lukaku dispatched. Then they tore through us with Tielemans and Doku, who was a monster all night, putting goals past us. So by 27 minutes, we were 3-0 down. Belgium took the foot off the gas, and Cymru were awarded a penalty in the 7 minutes into the first half stoppage time, as goalkeeper Sells was judged to have fouled Mepham in the box. Harry Wilson put away the penalty for what we thought was a consolation goal. Belgium made some half-time changes that smacked a little bit of job done, so let's give some squad players minutes, which got my back up, and it seemed the Cymru players' backs up as well. A superb set of silky play fell to Sorba Thomas to score his first goal for Cymru on 51 minutes. And then as Belgium were panicking, Brennan Johnson picked up a cross from Thomas and headed in an equaliser. At which point I woke up my 5-year-old son by celebrating too loud, which didn't please my wife particularly much. Cymru didn't sit back, which may have been their downfall, as Belgium suddenly woke up, scoring on the 80th minute, only for it to be ruled out due to the ball going out just before the goal was scored. This was a warning that Cymru didn't heed, and on 87 minutes, Cymru defence went to sleep as Tielemans crossed to the far post for an unmarked De Bruyne to slot in the goal to make it 4-3 to Belgium. Heartbreak, but pride, as Cymru finished second in Group J, 1 point behind group leaders North Macedonia. Belgium are 3 points behind Cymru, but with 2 games in hand. Firstly, great news that the Cymru fan who fell from the top balcony in the stadium has been released from hospital. So to whoever you are, sir, get well soon. Now, normally, I ask Jamie and Daz what they both made of the game, and they tell me what they thought. But there are so many points to go through, and I want to make sure I hit every single one. I'm going to ask specific questions of each of you this week. So, Daz, Belgium shot out of the blocks and smothered Cymru for the first half. Do you think Cymru were too defensive for that first 45 minutes?
I think Belgium had the scare that they needed in the previous game against North Macedonia that probably lit a fire underneath them in terms of not wanting to perform that badly again. I get a sense that there was a lot of shock at that disappointment for that result. They weren't happy about the situation, and so I think they allowed them to regroup. They were definitely the better team. They were, incredibly well drilled, well organized. Their press was impressive. I mean, literally, you could see they were double marking Harry Wilson out of the midfield. They know he's our game changer. So I do think that they were the better team. They were very impressive in that first period. I think when we did get the ball, we made a couple of sort of, potential runs and potential moves for goal, but actually the last touch was a little bit weak, or the shots were a bit speculative or anything like that. But it was to be honest, the majority of the time we lost possession too cheaply. There was a couple of loose balls, a couple of things like that, so we made the situation harder for ourselves. But Belgium were definitely up for it. I do think when you've got a team as ranked at number 8 in the world with that number of players. I mean, I was watching with my daughter and we were just counting them, going like, "Oh, Aston Villa, Man City." It's just, there was just so many Premiership teams, players that we know familiar with. We know their quality, and yet you're looking at our side and we're looking at Oxford. And it's a gulf. It's an absolute gulf, and not to knock Mark Harris's contributions from Oxford, but it's a different playing in a different division, a different league, and it shows sometimes. But you can't fault Cymru's resolute nature, but at that point it did look slightly worrying.
Jamie, the first Belgium goal was from a penalty where Brennan Johnson was punished for handball in the box. I'll ask you both about VAR a bit later, so don't go into VAR right now. But, Jamie, was it a handball for you? And does this help? Probably not. This is the best screen grab I could get. This is a millisecond before apparently Brennan Johnson handballed the ball in the box. There it is, right there, before it hits.
How can you ask me to answer that question without expecting me to go on a rant about VAR? Right,
well, you can go on a rant about VAR later on.
Okay, I'll try really hard, right?
Okay, cool.
Fuck VAR. That is not a penalty in a million years. I mean,
okay.
Look, obviously, for our audio listeners, they can't see what we're looking at, but for everyone that's watching, it is actually a great still. Like you say, it's a split second, but it is literally just before the ball hits his hand. What is he supposed to do with his arm? What is he supposed to do with it? I mean, I think
so. He's not looking at the ball for a start for me, right? He's not looking at the ball. Okay, it's not as if he's looking at the ball and sticking his hand out to stop it. Okay?
That's a fair point. I think the reaction of him looking away from it is a typical striker midfielder reaction where the ball's coming to them and they turn their head. If you look at a lot of defenders, they don't do that. They stay, looking square at where the ball's coming from. But you're right. He's not looking at the ball. But I think it was because I was watching the BBC Wales footage, and it was Nathan Blake was one of the halftime pundits, and he was talking about it. And I think it was him. Forgive me if it wasn't him, but I think it was him. And he made a really, really good point. And I think it's something that probably needs sort of talking about on a broader spectrum with this whole handball bullshit, which is if you watch a lot of defenders now, not necessarily defenders in the team, but anyone that's on the defending team, if you watch them now when the ball's coming in, they're instinctively putting their hands behind their back because they're too scared of the ball hitting their hands. And obviously they're training like this, they're being taught like this. I think I dare say if I went and watched my nephew play under eights or whatever, I bet you they're doing it at that level because it's probably been ingrained into them now. But what Nathan Blake said was that's more unnatural doing that with your hands than it is having them, because you use your hands, you use your arms for leverage. If you to use it, if you turn into to get your pace up or something, to elevate yourself to jump for the balls for a header, you use your arms as part of the movement of your body. So the way this rule has gone and the way it's being interpreted is absolute nonsense. And okay, there's sometimes where you see it where, the hand's out here or it's over here and the ball hits it, and you've got to ask yourself the question, is it in an unnatural position? It's hard to say. If you're running at a ball to try and block it, I just think it's a natural kind of thing. That's what you do with your arm. But that is a terrible decision. And what makes it even worse is if the referee would have given that, blown his whistle, penalty, happy days, and then you look back at it after, like it used to be before VAR. You'd look back at it and you say, "What a terrible decision!" But at the end of the day, it's a human error. He gets one look at it in split second time. He's obviously been switched on enough to see it hit his arm. But this is where then VAR is a huge nonsense and a problem, is because as long as you're relying on a human to still make a decision, it's open to interpretation. And how anyone can look at that and view that as a penalty is beyond me, absolutely beyond me. But no, it wasn't a penalty.
Daz, your thoughts on the Johnson handball?
I love it that you asked me these questions. Okay, I think it was harsh. I think I'm with the rest of the Welsh nation where I don't know what he's supposed to do in that situation. First of all, I want to credit Johnson for being in the right place, putting his body in the line, because there was a few. There was a passage of play there where actually, there was a few feints and a few dummies and people getting sold, and the fact that he kind of read the game, got himself back into in amongst the defence, but he's not a defender, and his natural instincts might not be the same, but any player, I would challenge any player to remain balanced, be able to move quickly, to be able to turn and not have his hands where they were. And they were comfortably down by his side, if not almost tucking it behind himself, because he knew there was a risk of handball. So he's not done it purposely. In fact, he looks like he's trying to take it away. So I think it's a very harsh decision. And the fact that the VAR, the VAR, I still feel has an important part to play, but it's how it's used. But it's the definition of whether or not it was a clear and obvious mistake. And to the referee, he thought it was a penalty. Was it an I've seen those given before, and I'm wondering whether or not it was the VAR ref going, I'm not going to overturn this decision. It wasn't the fact that they thought it wasn't a penalty. I don't think it was a clear and obvious mistake. I'm hoping that's the decision, because if a ref had seen that footage and gone, that's definitely a penalty, then that's disappointing and wholly inaccurate.
Daz, Belgium continued to tear Cymru to shreds, with Doku being almost unstoppable. Do you think it was wise to put Wilson and Ampadu, two players who had just come back from injury, together in midfield with such a big game?
I think when we're playing the top teams, we have to have our top players. I think that's always been my thought on making sure that we're giving ourselves as good a chance as any to compete with the best, and so we've got to have our best players. And there's no denying that Harry Wilson is absolutely our top player at the moment in terms of making things happen, scoring the key goals. So he was definitely going to be in there. Ampadu, we've used him as a defender. We've used him as a defensive, a low-sitting midfielder. We've also used him as an attacking midfielder. So he has class. He has potential across the whole pitch. Injuries, I think if they're fit, if medics say they're fit, then that's fine. I think it was. It's important that we have all our best players on the pitch. So I don't think it was the decision to pick those two players was why we were weaker in midfield. I do think there was a few, let's say, touches that were loose. I don't think everybody was quite ready for the onslaught of this high press, and the fact that they were in their faces. And when you've got this, quality running at you, and you've got to make quick decisions, I just think there was the Belgians wanted it more at the beginning, certainly, and I think it took us a long time to sort of really realise what we were there to do, and how best to nullify this impressive Belgian team.
Jamie, 3-0 down, and although battling a mountain to climb, what kind of a reaction were you expecting from the team before we scored that first goal just before half-time?
It's easy to say now, I hope for a response to restore some pride. But that is the honest truth. I mean, the bottom line is you have to call it what it was. For 25, 30 minutes of that game, we were absolutely battered. We were battered by some world-class players. I think I have to say that I think that the way that Belgium lined up surprised us a little bit, particularly you mentioned there about it being in midfield. I think it surprised us because I think the fact they played Tillemans and Onana as like holding midfielders and basically gave De Bruyne this free role. I don't think we could cope with it.
No.
And we really struggled. And like you mentioned there about Harry Wilson and Ampadu, in that first half in particular, they were anonymous, which is unusual because we're so used to, particularly Harry Wilson, having such an effect in Wales games. He was anonymous, and that's not a criticism of his performance. He was made to be anonymous because of the way that we were having to chase Belgium. But like I say, let's not sugarcoat it. They battered us for that first 30 minutes with some stunning football at times, like you said about Doku. He was unplayable at times in that game, even right to the end. There were times where he was unplayable. In fact, arguably, and I watched quite a bit of Premier League football. I think that was the best I've ever seen him play. And I've seen him play for Man City quite a few times. And yes, he's always a threat, and he's pace and he's power, but he was honestly he was unplayable in that game. But I hoped, when we were 3-0 down, before we got that lifeline of a penalty, I just hoped to see a response to try and make sure that it didn't carry on. Because if we'd have had a second half like we had the first half, it could have ended up a very embarrassing score. And you have to give credit to Craig Bellamy again, because obviously he's. I don't think he will have laid into them at halftime, because he strikes me that he's not that kind of manager. It sounds strange when you think about what kind of a player he was. But I honestly don't think he's that kind of a manager. But whatever he does, he's obviously, however he portrays himself as a manager in training sessions and with the players, he's obviously got a very good way of getting the players to buy into his philosophy and his way, because they would all clearly run through a wall for him. So that was, for me, that was, I just hope to see some pride restored and a slightly bridge gap between what looked like two opposite ends of the spectrum for most of that first half.
Well, Jamie, 7 minutes into injury time, and this time a penalty the other way, as the goalkeeper looked to have fouled one of our players. Was this one a penalty? I haven't got a screenshot of it because I couldn't find one that made me think, actually, was this a penalty?
It's really hard to answer this without being biased, I think. It's easy for me to say yes, it was a penalty. But I'm not sure. It could have quite easily not been given. Seeing it again a couple of times over, you look at it, you think, well, he's gone for the ball. It was Chris Mepham, I think, wasn't it? He fouled.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
He did get to the ball first, but you see that kind of thing all the time.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying it's right, but you see that kind of thing all the time, and I don't think I've ever seen a penalty given in that scenario. Often, if an attacking player literally farts anywhere by a goalkeeper, it's normally a free kick to the goalkeeper. So I was flabbergasted that it was initially given as a. Well, did the referee give it as a penalty straight away, and then it was checked with VAR, or did VAR give it? Can't remember.
I think the ref. I don't think VAR can give it. They're not allowed. They can only basically say that if the ref makes a mistake, a clear and obvious error, is they can overturn it. But they can't award a penalty direct. All they can say to the referee is, "We think you've got this wrong," and then the referee will say, "Okay, fair enough, I got it wrong."
Yes, sorry, but what I mean is it wasn't a case of the incident happened and then VAR were checking for. No, he gave it on field, didn't he?
He gave it. Yeah, he gave it. I mean, almost like he's trying to balance up the fact that the bullshit first penalty. Maybe that's what it was.
Well,
Who knows?
Who are we to say that there's any sort of dodginess going on at UEFA level? Whether it, I mean, Christ, it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was something like that. But in all honesty, when you look at the game as a whole and the refereeing as a whole throughout the whole game, it doesn't surprise me that he gave it, because it was. I think it was more contentious than the handball against us, but I do think you'd have to be pretty bold to hold your hands up and say 100% hand on heart you think that was a penalty, given that it's the sort of thing we see week in, week out in football. So yeah, I think we maybe got a little bit lucky with that one, but gladly taken.
Daz, as we've just intimated, goalkeepers are usually protected. Were you surprised the ref gave this penalty?
It's a bit of a weird one, this, because when the whistle blew initially, I thought, how soft is that? They're protecting the goalkeeper. And my initial instinct, my reaction was based on what you would normally expect to see in that situation. So there was something quite refreshing about the fact that it was in favour of the attacker. In having seen the footage, I can see why it's given, because I don't think he's in control of the situation. The arm comes flying through and makes contact with another player's head. And I don't think he's under pressure or getting, because sometimes they get pushed and it changes their body angle, and that means the counterbalance, their arm swings. There's all sorts of reasons why they might lose control of their limbs in that way. But he wasn't under pressure. I think he got it completely wrong. And again, I wonder if this was a VAR decision based around the fact that the ref had given the penalty, and I think the VAR ref is not going to overturn the decision based on it wasn't a clear and obvious mistake. I mean, they did take a long time to look at these, and that doesn't help. But the fact that he comes through not really under pressure and not really in control, I think him coming through and hitting, I can see why it's given, but for me it's as soft as the penalty that we was given against us. So in many ways it's 1-1.
Daz, 3-1 down. They made some changes at half time which saw them take off players who were playing incredibly well and bring on players that looked like they needed match experience. One in particular, Luca Bacchio, was subbed himself 25 minutes into the half as Belgium started to implode. Sober Thomas, post-match, said that Belgium didn't show Cymru respect. Do you agree with that?
I'm not sure about whether it's a lack of respect, but I certainly think that the management had decided that the game was in a safe place, that they could make some of these decisions. I think when you've got the quality of their squad, any substitution is maintaining I do think it maintained the strength of the team. I don't think they were weaker in terms of players. I appreciate it can be useful to give players game time, and you want to see the combinations. We were talking about it earlier about other the other squads being learning about how teams play with each other, and it's the first time you play these particular formations. You want to know what you've got in your squad, and I think that for me is a very important part of this tournament, so that you're better prepared for games in the future. That said, their management had made some, I think, poor decisions in the sense that the players that were being substituted may not have been quite like for like, and certainly that formation wasn't complemented by the addition of those players, and but it also reflects in the fact that you can't underestimate how much of a difference Cymru had made in terms of their reaction. Their play was better improved. The adjustments that Cymru made as a squad felt positive. And I mean, Bellamy says there wasn't much, tactically he didn't change much, but I don't know. I think there was an impetus to move quicker. There was an impetus to to close down quicker, and the confidence was there. And clearly, fitness wasn't an issue because some players played a lot of minutes these last games at an intensity there for Cymru was great. So I think the fact that he must have underestimated Cymru's ability to sustain that level, I think their adjustments sort of offset their solidity. I don't think it's about weaker players. I think they're just not the same, and it didn't complement. And so, of course, substituting a sub is never a pretty thing, but I don't think it was because he was underachieving. I think they just recognized that was the wrong player in the wrong role, and he needed to then readdress it and put somebody back into it that could carry out that role, could do it better, and give them the balance they needed. And yes, for that last few minutes, it was a lot closer game. So in many ways, you can credit the manager for getting it right, but he didn't get it right first time. So I think we benefited from that moment, but it did take him a long time to address it. But I don't think we can play down how well Cymru adapted and adjusted their game, intensity, even if the tactics were exactly the same.
Jamie, Cymru played the second half like a different team almost. Why do you think that was?
I would like to give benefit of any doubt that a lot of it falls to Craig Bellamy, and to whatever he said to his players at half time and to the players themselves. I think they will have probably quite openly admitted that they were well off it in that first half. But I think the kind of mentality and the mindset that this squad seems to have now, I think would very much be a case that they will have acknowledged it themselves that it was poor, and they would have wanted to try and go and put it right. It was interesting. It was interesting to, like you said about what Sober Thomas said there. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would have walked back onto that pitch in the second half and thought we were being disrespected because they were making a substitution. At the end of the day, they took off that Trossard, who, to be fair, didn't do a lot. He was one of the Belgian players that I didn't think did an awful lot in that first half. So I didn't particularly, I didn't look at the team they sent out in the second half and think, oh God, they're taking the piss out of us here. To me, I thought, I actually think maybe they were caught a little bit on the hop. I think there was possibly a little bit of complacency on their part. I think the fact that they were 3-1 up and they had dominated most of that first half, I think they maybe thought they could just hold on to the ball and knock it around and that we were beaten. But I think obviously that wasn't the case, and hats off to the Wales lads, because that second half performance was brilliant, and they dominated a lot of that second half, to be fair.
Daz, 2 words, Sober Thomas, a player we've watched over the years, and although talented, never quite managed to hit a high. Has he finally turned that page and started to show the potential that we've seen for the last few years?
We love Sober Thomas. In our house, he is definitely one of the our favourite go-to guys. I mean, the journey that he's had with the national side is, it's just brilliant. I mean, okay, I have to admit, it was only the post-match interview of this game was the first time I'd ever heard him speak. Now, I know he's from London originally. You can certainly tell he's from London from this interview. So that for me was a reminder that our tactics to recruit Welsh players has borne fruits in many, many areas, but many of them, Ashley Williams will vouch for it, are not from the valleys directly, shall we say? But no, what a journey he's had. I mean, of course, he's still only 26. He's been a fringe player for a long time. He's been in many a squad. But I just love his directness. I mean, he's not afraid to take on some of the best players in European football at the moment are in that Belgian side, and he was taking them on. and he's right-footed, so of course the natural thing for him to do is to tuck in on, come in onto his right foot and sort of fizz those balls in. But I have to be impressed. I have been impressed with the way that he still can have a go with his left foot. Which, if you're on the left wing, as my daughter was reminding, saying like, why don't they have left-footers on the left wing? The modern game and everything. But he has got the potential. He's got the potential. But his speed is there. His finish was great. A really composed finish. So he's earned all the credit. I would say that he probably played a few too many minutes for me. I think the substitution didn't come soon enough, personally, for Thomas. And I think once he went off, there was another. I think Cymru went up another level in terms of intensity, and that was positive. And I wonder if it could have happened earlier, because he was tired. He'd worked hard, and not just as a winger, but as a sort of an additional fullback. And when you've had to make adjustments to losing your top world class with Nico Williams from that position already, he had to put in a shift, and he did. So yeah, big fans. We love him. And I'm really pleased for him to get his first goal in such a format, in such a this weekend is just what he deserves, I think.
Jamie scores from an incredible lead-up play. I mean, some fantastic 1-2 wing play, quick, fast football, and it's 3-2. Did you think that this was game on at this point in the game?
For sure, yeah, because we definitely started the second half. Well, let me caveat that. If you remember rightly, your man who you said before who came on, what was his name? Lukabaku. Lukabaku. He had a massive chance just after half time. In fact, I literally was pretty much straight from the kickoff.
Yeah, we were asleep.
And he blazed it over the bar. After that, I think we very much came into the game, and we very much took the game to them. Silva Thomas carried on with the way he was playing against Liechtenstein a few days before. Very, very pacey, a big threat, and was the quality of ball he was putting in was a little bit better than it had been against Liechtenstein. But obviously the goal he gets, obviously he gets himself the goal. Like you said, some lovely build-up play, some lovely passing.
One of the best Cymru goals you will see in a long time. That
absolutely.
Play was incredible.
And to see, obviously, to find him as the spare man on his own coming in on the back post, shows you how out of shape we pulled Belgium with the movement through the phases. But yeah, good finish. He still had to finish it off. It wasn't an easy finish by any stretch. And really delighted for him to see that he gets the goal. I think he, like I say, played well in both games. And like you've just said there, he's one that you've always kind of, for years, it's like, you get excited by him, but it's just something, not the end product, because it's not all about, but there's just something. It's just that last step has not quite been there, which is probably why he's been at Huddersfield and then being on loan to a French side last year. Obviously, he's got a big move now to a championship team, so hopefully he'll crack on. But yeah, brilliant goal, and yes, at that point I'm thinking, there's only 51 minutes gone here. There's still a huge part of this game to go. We look like we are swinging here for Belgium, and they looked proper on the ropes, to be fair.
Absolutely.
And honestly, God's honest truth, when we scored that second goal, my thought was, we are going to get back in this. We are going to get back in this and equalise. I wouldn't be brave enough to say that I thought we were going to win it at that point. But I could see us, after getting that second goal, I could see us getting an equaliser.
Daz, Cymru pulled it back to 3-3 with a brilliant Thomas Johnson combo. Johnson was quite quiet on Friday versus Liechtenstein, but how much of a difference did he make versus Belgium?
I do feel sorry for Brennan because he does get a lot of flack for the big price tag that he didn't ask for, but he got when he got his big money move to Spurs, and that elevated the intensity of the media interest in him and football fans alike, and I do think that he has so much potential. I mean, he's got the pace. He's a reasonably good dribbler, but what I like about Johnson is the way that he ghosts in at far posts. He becomes extra player quite often. The overlap is a sort of important part. But I'm yet to be convinced about him one-on-ones. Too many times they're going straight at the keeper. Now I know tucking it under the goalkeeper's legs or under the it's keeping it close to the body means it's harder to save, but you've got to get that right. You've got to get your angles right, and I think too many times his finish hasn't been brilliant. The other thing he's also got to be credited with, certainly in the Liechtenstein game, is that the energy and the amount of running he does, the defensive positions he puts himself against other teams as well. I think that wasn't as prolific in the Belgium game. I do think that he's had better games in that role where he's been backing up the defense and the midfield and tracking back. I think he's a little bit slower to do that. I know everyone says it's a long season and it's the end of the season, but Belgium's players have done the same. Everybody's in the same boat. But there is an interesting argument about the fact that Spurs have relied on him and as part of their success. Obviously, he had that purple patch. What was it, around Christmas, where he was just scoring every week. So we know he can do it, and of course, he has to have the right kind of players around him as well. But I'm not sure he's the kind of player that we want to build a team around, because he's not a Bale or he's not a Ramsey in that way. He's just a different type of player. But I do think he cares. I do think he wants to do well, but he is a confidence player. And I just think sometimes when he doesn't get those shots early on, you can see him making some sort of interesting decisions. But the interplay that he had with Harry Wilson on the wing, that led to the goal. I mean, it's we can see the positives. We can absolutely see the positives. I just know he's a confidence player, and he needs to be able to have consistency in his game, and I think that's the bit that he's not achieving quite as well for company as he does for Spurs.
Jamie, Belgium scored, but the ball was ruled to have gone out, which it did in the play leading up to the goal, with the VAR taking an age to decide. In fact, I think he was on commission, the VAR man, as it was constantly checking everything and not doing it very quickly. Now's your chance. I'm giving it to you. Has it changed your mind on the use of VAR in games?
No, because I fucking hate VAR. Full stop. I think the VAR man. If you send me your address, I'll pop these in the post for you. I mean, that incident. Like, let's just talk about that first. So that incident with the disallowed goal. That was a farce, an absolute farce. Okay, I get they've got to get it right. It's not their fault that they are there doing this job they've been asked to do. And they've got to try and get it right. And I guess you're only going to have limited angles of a ball potentially going out of play on a touchline versus a goal line or a byline. But you could clearly see by the reaction of the Welsh bench that there was something in it. And I guess you have to take that with a pinch of salt, because they're always going to appeal, aren't they? But you could clearly see that Bellamy in particular, because he's always standing out in the technical area, but then the few of the others off the bench, you could clearly see that they were adamant it had gone out. And then within a couple of replays of seeing it, and bear in mind, I'm not criticising the referee here, because this goes back down to that thing of the ref gets one look at it, and particularly from that kind of scenario, he's in the middle of the field, the ball's on the byline, he's never going to see that in a million years, so he's relying on his linesman, and again, you've got to be fair and say, depending on which side the linesman is and where they're positioned, what's in between them. It might not be something they miss. So I'm not blaming the referees on the field, but probably after the second replay of it, it was pretty obvious. It was over the full ball was over the line. As much as you could say with 100% certainty, it was over the line. So why it took, what was it, 7-8 minutes?
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Why it took so long is absolutely beyond me. And then if you then open it up then to the bigger rant about VAR, look, I love technology. I'm a right geek. Anything technology based, I'm there, right? And the idea of VAR is brilliant because I suppose, particularly at the highest level of football now, whether you like it or not, there is so much money involved. Look at Aston Villa on the last day of the Premier League season, and you could argue till the cows come home whether you think that was or wasn't, he kicked it out of the keeper's hands or whatever. But either way, that VAR decision, if you agree that was the wrong decision, that VAR decision has probably cost Aston Villa over 100 million quid because they didn't qualify for the Champions League. So at the top level, and I class international football as top level.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the need or the want for something like this. However, we've had this now for what, 5 seasons, 4, 5, 6 seasons, and to me, it still doesn't feel like we're any further along than we were at the beginning. And for me, the biggest problem with it, the two biggest problems with VAR, one, from a fan perspective, it takes some of the beauty out of the game. That jubilation of your team scoring a goal and you celebrating in the crowd. You can't beat that. There's nothing better than that. But then to be in a situation where you celebrate for 60 seconds, the players all celebrate on the pitch for 60 seconds, and the next thing you get on the big screen, VAR check, or the ball is being checked for VAR, possible offside.
And
Okay,
it happened
cool.
a lot. It happened a lot in this game, didn't it? At least one of the Wales game, one of the Cymru goals, they said, "Oh, hang on, there's a VAR check," and I'm just thinking, "Oh, come on."
Yeah, and then 3 minutes later, we get a decision, and I just think it takes some of the beauty out of the game. I'm very much a firm believer in decisions even themselves out over the course of, whether not necessarily a game, but over the course of a season. Decisions even themselves out. If you go back to last season and talk, when we talked about different Wrexham games, there were games where we talked about where there was penalties given, against us that we probably didn't think were penalties, and there were penalties that we got given that again we didn't think were penalties, but we got them. Swings and roundabouts, and I genuinely think that over the course of a season, stuff evens itself out. Yes, it's frustrating as hell when you can clearly see a wrong decision has been made. But when you start involving VAR, for it to be, like I said, for me, it takes, and like I said before, I watch a lot of Premier League football, so I've seen it a lot. And it must be so infuriating to be in the ground. And so for me, that's one of my biggest hatreds towards VAR. But the second thing, and the biggest problem with it, and why it will never ever work, is you are still relying on a human being to make a final decision. You can give him all the camera angles you want under the sun. You can slow it down to, super, super duper slow-mo, almost in reverse. You can do all that jazz, but you are still relying on a human being to make a decision. Now, on some, fair enough. On some of them, maybe an offside, referee allowed play to go on, or the linesman and the referee didn't think it was an offside, allowed plays to go on, the goal went in the back of the net, possible offside, VAR, check it, and you can clearly see from a replay it was offside. Again, I don't particularly, I don't like that scenario, but I can understand if it's quick and efficient, great. But it's these instances where you are talking minutes of delays, and it's just infuriating. And like I said, for me, and I don't think you're ever going to be able to fully automate all parts of VAR, because you're not going to. I know they've got this semi-automatic offside jazz, but for VAR, you still have a human being who has ultimately got to make a decision. And for as long as you've got that in the mix, it's open to interpretation. Go back to the Brennan Johnson handball in this game we're talking about, you could ask 1,000 people, was that a handball or not? And I dare say 999 of them would say, no, I don't think it was a penalty. But if one says they think it was a penalty, then you've got there's uncertainty, and that's what you've got with VAR, because you've got one person. I know there's multiple people in the room all sharing a pizza, but there's one person who's responsible for making a decision. And as much as he might hot potato it back and say, "Oh, to the referee, yeah, go and have a look at it on the screen," either way, and that for me is why it will never work. And I look, they tried it. It's come in, and happy days. Just give it up as a bad experiment. They won't. It's here to stay now. Unfortunately, it's one of the things which makes me. It's one of the things which makes me. When we talk about Wrexham getting to the Premier League, and it sounds crazy. You hear a lot of Wrexham fans saying we probably don't want to even go to the Premier League, and I can understand that. And VAR would be one of those reasons why I wouldn't want to go.
Well,
to the Premier
yeah, exactly.
League.
That's a major thing, isn't it? It's a major part. I mean, Daz, you've seen more VAR in the Premiership, obviously watching Liverpool, as in League One, it's not required, so Wrexham fans don't have to suffer it. In your opinion, is VAR usually this bad in interrupting the flow of matches?
This game seemed to have longer pauses than most games that I've seen. I think VAR has its place. I'm probably a fan. I'm in favour. I'm of the school that I like the decision to be right. Now, that said, VAR doesn't always guarantee the right decision. We've just witnessed that today, on this game particularly. I do think it has a place when it's done well, and to do it well, it needs to be prompt and swift. And this felt unnecessarily long. I couldn't work out why it was taking so long. There was a couple of moments where there was some checks, and I couldn't even see what they were checking for. I think Cymru's third goal went to a check, and I couldn't even. Well, there was nobody anywhere near offside, so it's overzealous sometimes. So I think that's the user, not the system. I do think that there's an element of that. I'm not blaming the ref on the pitch, because he just went he's holding the play, he's waiting for the response, he's having a chat with the players. I mean, you can see that it's an uncomfortable sort of pause in play for him as well. I don't think he wants it to last any longer than it should do. So that is it does seem odd that those decisions took so long. Equally, on the continent, particularly obviously, say in major tournaments, they use the automated system or the semi-automated system, which is supposed to be a lot quicker. Now, I'm in two minds of that, because I like the idea of it being quicker, the fact that a computer could probably generate the answer quite quickly, although I can't be sure that I agree that when they present the findings, that it's these graphic players' bodies that they show this imaginary line touching the bodies of these players, when those are just 3D human shapes. I mean, they don't represent. Are we absolutely happy that they are exactly where the player's limbs are? The toe is exactly where it is, the knee's on the right angle, because they all seem to be the same sort of proportioned character. If we're talking like avatars here, but if you put a Kiefer Moore on there versus a Harry Wilson, they're not the same shape. So there's a little bit of lacking in trust in there. I quite like the Premiership one, where you use the actual footage that you've seen. You can see them draw the lines, and there has to come a point where the players have to, the fans, players as well, but the fans have to be able to trust the decision. But it shouldn't be taking this long. Does it spoil the game when the flow is stopped? Sometimes it adds. I must admit, sometimes it can add tension. Nobody likes losing a game or winning a game on penalties, but that adds the tension. There are parts to the game that I think this can enhance. Goal line technology came in. We now consider it to be the norm, apart from when Wales are playing Italy or somebody, whoever it was. So when the technology is working and is working well, it is absolutely brilliant, and it adds another layer to the whole occasion. But if it's taking 4, 5, 6 minutes to make a decision, then something's wrong with the system, or at least the users of the system, because it shouldn't be that bad.
So, Daz, Cymru were getting tired. One lapse in concentration by the Cymru defence let the draw slip, and we lost. Should Cymru have shut up shop to defend the draw rather than chase the winner, or is now against the new Bellamy ethos?
You gotta love this team's ambition. It epitomizes Bellamy in every sense of the word. They had fought themselves back into contention, and their one thought was keep going. And I think as much as our general health might not be able to tolerate it over the coming years, this is going to be a very exciting time for being a Cymru supporter. I absolutely understand the voices that are out there that said, when we hit the draw with so little time left in the game, there should have been a change of tactics and defend. I don't know if we have those players. I don't know if we have those players against this quality of side. I know we've managed to, defend some, or at least narrow leads and see those games out. And maybe this was the time to test it. But I'm not entirely sure I would want to see all of that work undone by getting back into the game 3-3, and all that work undone by trying to hold on. I absolutely applaud them, and I don't mind them losing the game in the way that they lost it, because they were trying to win it. Okay, they gave away the goal because it was a moment's lapse of concentration, and I'm not even going to say Roberts was out. Roberts got suckered into the middle because the centre halves were a little bit out of shape. So of course he feels like he's covering. He's doing what he believes is the right thing to do. Of course, when the player you're dealing with is Kevin De Bruyne, that decision making is then another level. I feel that Connor did look tired. I do feel that he got a little bit sloppy by the end, but I don't know where our options are in terms of replacing. We had already, utilised a lot of our sort of substitute choices in that game, and I'm not sure that it was that straightforward. But I do think he was also tired. He'd put in a big shift, and so his concentration was bound to be affected, but it was a quality ball, and it was an amazing finish. So yeah, I'll go back to my previous statement. I don't mind losing a game like that when we tried, and we tried hard, and we genuinely could have won the game. There was opportunity, and I do think the Belgium, absolutely, by the way that they reacted, they knew they were in a right slug fest of a match. I also want to say that at least the players didn't give up. I'm talking about Belgian players. It feels like the crowd had given up at one point. They were. I'd be really disappointed as a Belgian player. The reaction of the fans, absolute fair weather. So I credit them for keep going. And when you've got quality like that on the pitch, they can score at any time. And so it is hard because it was so late in the game. And by that point, that was the sucker punch for us, and we lost all our wind. And then it doesn't matter how many minutes you added on the end. Their tails were up, we were down, and it was hard. It was hard to sort of change that. So credit to everybody involved. What a game! Really enjoyed it. And yes, I think a 3-3 at the end would have been a worthy result for what was achieved. But yeah, bit of class at the end is going to win you a game.
Jamie, so Cymru comes so close but ultimately lose out 4-3. How did you feel at the final whistle?
Gutted, but very proud. I think I wasn't overly critical of the players in the first half. I've watched games before. Watched Wales games before where I've got to half time and I've been like, what the hell was that? I didn't really have that feeling about me, because I think it was more complementary to Belgium, to be honest, because I think they played phenomenally well in that first half and just completely caught us cold. But to still be 3-1 down at half time, particularly given the results that Bellamy's had. He's been there nearly a year now, hasn't he? And up until this game was undefeated. So,
Yeah.
to see the results that we've had, but more importantly, the performance and the kind of mentality in this team now that he's instilling in them, it would have been a shame to lose it. We obviously we were going to lose a game at some point, but it would have been such a shame to lose a game, and feel that you'd been completely outplayed or you'd been completely, it was a complete mismatch. But I think that second half performance, you can't help but feel anything other than proud. It was a really good, gutsy second half performance. Really unfortunate to concede that goal at the end, but Kevin De Bruyne is world class. Even at the age he is now, he is a world class footballer. And despite the fact that he played 90 minutes, and like you said at the beginning, for once he showed up against Wales. But let's be a bit respectful. As a general rule, and I've seen enough of him over the years, he is a world class footballer still today. And that there were moments in that game where he showed us that, and that was a great example of it. We rode our luck by having that one disallowed a few minutes before it. But look, I wasn't. Yes, I was disappointed, but very proud. And I sound like Heather Smalley. I'm saying very proud that much. What have you done today to make you feel proud? No, I'm not concerned. I've not gone away from this. I know I'm taking the pay here with my having to go at England for the old Senegal defeat. Take their scenario as an example. I'd be more worried if I was an England fan. And I'm not just saying that just to be a dick.
Beating Andorra only 1-0 and then
but
losing Senegal.
I watched that Andorra game and they were awful. And then I didn't watch the Senegal game, but to lose 3-1 like that, when you think of the players they've got at their disposal, I'd be more worried if I was an England fan. So I've got no concerns. I am still confident. I'm not saying it's a given because it absolutely isn't, but I'm still confident that we can qualify. I'm very confident that in the return fixture against Belgium, it'll be a different story. I think a very different story. If nothing else, the flag will be there. Come on. I've got a lot of love this week.
Yeah, it certainly has. Yes, it's been great. The stuff on social media. I mean, obviously, we've now not got a game till early September where we've got Kazakhstan away, and then obviously we will play Liechtenstein away, and then North Macedonia and Belgium home in October, which is the last game. As Jamie just mentioned, we still have to bring Belgium to the Cardiff City Stadium on 13th of October. Last qualifying game of the campaign. What kind of a game are you expecting after this tussle in Brussels?
It's the last game of the campaign, which means there could be a lot riding on it. I didn't think this was going to be the case. I mean, we've known what the fixture list was looking like. We knew that game was going to be at the end. I was hoping that, we're assuming Belgium beat everybody, that we would be then a decent second place behind them. North Macedonia's position is a bit of a surprise. I don't think unmerited. I just didn't necessarily feel that was obvious and that was coming, and certainly not the result against Belgium. So I think that's just thrown a bit of a spanner in the works, blown it a bit more wide open. So on that day, there's going to be definitely a lot to play for in all the games that weekend. It doesn't help that Belgium have not played that many games because they've had other sort of commitments and stuff. So their schedule list means that they've only played the 2 games or something. So it means that it's been skewed a little bit, the fact that they're not sitting proudly at the top, clear. So it did make we were obviously a bit optimistic at one point that we might be top of the table or something like that. But yeah, I do think in terms of what the game will be like, I don't think it'll be any different. I think, especially when we're at home, Pellamy's going to be aggressive. He's going to be adventurous. He's going to be, absolutely all about the attacking ball, but also pressing. But it's not recklessness. There's always shape at the back. And I think we're just going to go into every game with that ambition. So it does make the games against North Macedonia the most significant fixtures now in this group. And who knows? Maybe we can go into that game already and it's a dead rubber. But I sense we're going to be probably looking for like a draw minimum or something like that, just to make sure, or rather than having to rely on some other results going in our favour. So it's going to be a hell of a game. And as a rematch goes, it's going to be, I think it's going to be intense. It's going to be impressive. It's going to be quality all over the pitch, and it's going to be lots more goals. Having said that, now watch it be a 0-0 draw.
Come and see the Reds with me, and you will swear that you have seen a vision. We know just how they feel when they beat me by McNeil. We're off to the second division.
As we say goodbye to Frederick Forsyth, writer of the Odessa Files and one of my favourite thrillers, Day of the Jekyll, we too must get false passports and be on our way. You've been listening to the Eat More Chips podcast, the official podcast, one of the greatest Welsh supporters flags in the universe. If you have enjoyed listening to us, please support the podcast, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You can find us on audio at Spotify, Apple, and YouTube Music. You can also go into our social media, such as X, Threads, and Blue Sky at Tweet More Chips, or drop us an email, eatmorechipspodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, Eat More Chips Podcast, and on Facebook, search for the Eat More Chips Podcast group. You can leave us a review of the platform you're listening on that you do so, and if anything particular you'd like us to discuss, please feel free to drop us a line. Our thanks as always to the North Wales folk band The Harvesters and their 1978 Wrexham football song. Taking a lead from Daz, we're now all off for the next 3 weeks as we recharge our batteries ready for the new season. While we're away, the fixture list will be released on the 26th of June, and it's possible Wrexham will sign some players. There may be some news about the COP, and Welcome to Wrexham Season 4 will come to an end, all of which we'll discuss on our return. So expect the episode on the 4th of July to be about 12 hours long. Now able to rest following the Belgium excitement is Daz, as he's blessed us with his remote access dial-up. So thank you, Daz. See you in a few weeks.
Sorry I can't be there, but I know you always make up for it without me. I've been listening into the previous episodes, and it's as if you don't need me to be there. You guys have just got this wonderful dialogue. Oh no, sorry, it gets better when I'm there. No, you're right. I'm coming back, guys. I'm coming back. You need me there. You need me there in the conversation. So I'll see you in a few weeks.
Of course, ever steadfast has been my little brother without the jester hat from 20 years ago. And if you've seen the photo from the LDV Vans final doing the rounds, you'll know what I'm talking about. So thank you, Jamie.
My pleasure. Let's just make it clear, though. You and Daz are going on holiday. I'm not going on holiday. I obviously don't earn the big bucks from this podcast. I'm staying here and I'm working. So, yeah. You enjoy your vacation, you enjoy your holiday, or your all-inclusive buffet and all that jazz.
It's not my fault you obviously spend all your money on drinking drugs and rock and roll, is it?
Jesus Christ. What about gas and electric?
Wow, is that the new thing? Is it? Okay, cool. I've been Welshtechie. I've been Welshtechie, off to slip into my budgie smugglers with the aid of a crowbar. So I'll see you in 3 weeks. What a thought. You can all have that one for the next 3 weeks. And in the meantime, come on, Cymru, and come on the town.